Hello and welcome. This is Peter Palmiotti, and this is Making Comics and Art episode 202. Just be me tonight. Alison is out playing games with her friends. Not D&D, but very close. She said. But today we have Chris with us. Welcome, sir.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure, man. It's like I'm not a D&D guy. I understand the basics of it. I grew up on like Monopoly and other things, but I thought it was a really cool idea to smash up two different things you like and put it into one. So like, you wanted to make a comic and you wanted to add a D&D element to it, and you could explain it to folks that don't know you and your work and the comic book in question. Go right ahead.
Yeah. So my book is called C.R.I.T, and if you play D&D, a crit is a nat 20, which is full damage. It's the most sought out role you can have in Dungeons and Dragons. And so it's about a group of superheroes who, unlikely superheroes. And in the story we're at right now, they're not really super yet. They're just kind of deciding what they want to be. But it's a story about four friends who gain superpowers and kind of learn to navigate the world now that they have these abilities. And their employer knows they have them, so the employer kind of uses that as a marketing and technique to try and, market a new product, heroes. Doesn't really work well for them because these guys don't really act as heroes. They act more as anti-heroes, vigilantes, that style. So we follow them, as they kind of grow with their powers and the world evolves around them. The reason I chose Dungeons and Dragons, really, I didn't want to do a comic at first. The comic was an afterthought once we began the campaign. I had gotten my group of friends back together after 10 years, and we hadn't played, D&D as a group in, like I said, a decade. And I had this idea for superhero D&D. It was something we always tossed around, but never really figured out how to do because the mechanics didn't really exist for it. So I took some time and I created my own rule set using, the base D&D rules. And then presented my game to my friends, and they were like, yeah, this is going to be fun. And it turned into utter chaos. And after the first session, we talked about that session for a month afterward. These are guys some of us hadn't really talked in 10 years. And we had a group chat, and we were just talking every day about something we did or what we wanted to do next time or what how the characters were. It was just constant excitement surrounding the game. So I started just sketching it out. Mind you, I didn't really know how to draw. I did some stuff in the past, but I never really did anything to this caliber. And so after a few months, I had drawn a first book, and they were all cool with it. Well, my wife is a fantastic artist, and I showed the book to her, and I wasn't met with anything very nice. It was just, yeah, that's okay. And so that motivated me into drawing a little bit better and learning more. Instead of putting it down, I decided to try harder. And with her help, I really learned how to, draw a comic book. And after the first, I finished another issue. I showed it to a few people, and they were like, oh, you should put it on Kickstarter, because I only had real black and white artwork. I hadn't taught myself how to color yet. And I had to pay a colorist, but I didn't have any money. And somebody was like, well, put it on Kickstarter, and then you'll get, money to pay a colorist. So I went to Kickstarter. I didn't have an Instagram. Again, this wasn't anything that was planned. It was just, hey, let's put a book out there and, see what we can do with it, kind of thing. The first Kickstarter actually failed because I didn't have any marketing and I didn't have any following and I didn't know what to do. I just put a random goal up there of $1,500 and I only needed 500, and wound up failing. A friend of mine saw it afterward and was like, "Oh, I didn't know you're trying to raise money," and so he sent me the money I needed. He's independently wealthy, so I was blessed. Oh, what's up, Greg? And I wound up being able to make the comic book. In turn, since someone had been nice enough to give me that money, I gave everybody that backed it on Kickstarter, even though I didn't collect on it, because with Kickstarter, if you don't meet your goal, you can't collect. I gave them all free books just for being interested in the series. Nice. And I just put it up there and I put it on the website thinking it might be, maybe a couple people pick it up. And within a month, I sent out like 150 packages. And so I said, okay, I guess I need to do this. And that's when it turned into issue 2, 3, so on and so forth. It wasn't really planned to be putting 6 issues out in the first 2 years. That just it was a snowball effect.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. Like, some people dream all their lives of, doing their own comic and really planning and whatnot. But I give credence to, like, just wanting to do something that pops into your head one day and going for it. And you made it work. That's incredible.
Yeah, I'm the guy that I fall down and then I do it the right way. I've done that with like everything that I've ever done. When I joined my first band, I told them I knew how to play guitar. I took a few lessons, so I had known like just enough to play a chord or two, and I put the distortion pedal on and made myself sound really cool. And a couple years later, I got signed to Sony Records. So, fake it till you make it. I learned that. Even I did bodybuilding for a little while, and I remember my first competition, I walked on stage and I looked at everyone around me and I was like, oh, that's what you're supposed to look like. I didn't even diet. I just did some cardio, ate some chicken and rice, and then didn't drink water for like an entire day because I thought that's, what that stuff was. And then I got a coach afterward. So I've always been the guy that kind of just like, oh, that sounds like fun. Let me try it. And then I'm like, oh, that's not how you do that. You have to do it this way. So I'm, how like water likes the path of least resistance. I'm the exact opposite. I like the path with the most resistance.
Right. Awesome. So do we want to show people the campaign page and we can go over details? They can see the artwork, and then we can give people a glimpse. Click on that.
Greg in the comments talking about Gun Demon. That book looks awesome. And Kickstarter is like really tricky. Sometimes you'll see books that you wouldn't think would do great, and then books that you think would do great don't. It's really weird how that shows up. But yeah, so this is our Kickstarter page. We did fund in 26 minutes, which was freaking awesome.
Nice.
Live launch, and everybody on Instagram was just out there supporting, and it really meant a lot. So here's a basic rundown of what C.R.I.T is. It's a superhero comic based on Dungeons and Dragons, action adventure series. Really, if you like tongue-in-cheek humor, over the top, stupidity. I wouldn't say action because a lot of the action ends in stupidity because they don't really roll that well all the time. Then you'd like our book. Everything in the book is determined by the roll of the dice. I don't write what happens. I record what happens, and then I turn it into a comic book.
That's so cool.
We've got the first ever behind the scenes. I was able to get everybody on one video for like an hour, and we talked about everything these guys aren't really on social media, so getting them to talk about stuff has been hard, but they agreed to do it for this Kickstarter. So if you want to check out that, the video is up there. So we're in our 6th book. It's issue 5, but we have issue 0. So it's our 6th book. And in this one, everything's coming to a close from chapter 1 for them. This is really where the characters come into themselves. And again, if you've played Dungeons and Dragons, it takes, there's my wife. Hey. It takes a few seconds for the DM to really get into a groove with the players and for the players to really get into a groove with their characters. And this is the session where everything really meshed well. So they're finally coming into like into terms with being heroes and what their abilities are, and then realizing that there's other things at play that they might want to pay attention to more than going to work and beating up bad guys that rob their place of employment. So if you like movies like Police Academy, The Other Guys, if you like Beverly Hills Cop or My Hero Academia, Bad Boys, stuff like that, you'll definitely get into our book. It's a very 90s buddy cop action comedy kind of stuff. And then we get into some of the covers down here. We've got a standard cover. We've got the variant cover, and then I've got 2 foil covers. One, what's up, Jerry? One foil cover, which is my villain book, and then I've got a hero cover. And I want to show you that one. This design was inspired by the song "Cool Guys Walk Away from Explosions" by Lonely Island. That's what I told them. I was like, I want that kind of feel. The cool guys walk away from explosions, and it's like an album cover. It's really cool. And this one right here, so we have like a funny cover on every single book now. Robert Nix does like my humorous stuff, and I pitched to him that in the book, Boulder eats a bad taco, and he gets he pretends to be sick, and the theme of the book was if the cream is sour, do not devour. And so he came up with this right here, which is just awesome. A whole bunch of tacos and everything on the ground, and he's just looking like he's about to throw up everywhere. The title of book 5 is Intestinal Fortitude, which means the ability not to shit your pants. So you can also pick up all 5 previous books on this campaign. And if you are if you're a single issue kind of person, we've got those available. And we also have, which I'll show you, I haven't updated this yet because I just got the artwork for it, but I'll also show you the trade paperback. I've got that in an update. But here's some of the previous books. So you got some panels here. We got 0, 1, 2. This is like one of my favorite pages. Caliber's my sarcastic, gun-wielding, he's the jerk of the group. And he gets in there and destroys the van every time he has a chance. He just hits everything. And here's one of my favorite characters. We have a talking cat in a top hat that has an alcohol problem. He's Samedi. He talks in riddles and has a really bad drinking problem. In fact, in all of book 4, he's just hungover and doesn't even show up to help. He's so I have a character named Spectre in the book, and Spectre is based off of a wizard warlock class, and he wanted a familiar that could help him in battle. And I, worked with him on a few different ideas, and eventually I gave him a cat because in real life he's allergic to cats. So in the game, because in the game the characters are based off of their real world counterparts, he's also allergic to cats. So if this cat is around for too long, he suffers negatives because he's allergic to the cat. And then the cat, of course, torments him and talks shit to him all the time. And then you get to see them without their masks in this book. They're running around trying to solve a crime, and they wind up uncovering something much bigger than just street level crime. So we can get into the reward tier. I always do digital copies. You can do a single issue where you can get all the books for $6. We've got the standard cover, and then the variant are $8, and these 2 deluxe editions are $10. Those are foil covers. And this book is going to be roughly 46 to 50. The deluxe edition is going to be about 50 pages of content by itself, and the trade paperback is 200 plus pages worth of content. For my D&D fans, you can get the character sheet, so you can test out and make your own versions of our characters, and you also get custom D6 die with that. We've got, of course, you can't not have a T-shirt on a campaign, so we got that. You can catch up on all the single issues. You can get the entire first chapter of Crit, or if you want to collect the whole thing, we've got that for you. And then I've got the big bundle, which comes with everything that you see here, and we have a Caliber figure being made right now. So yeah, and that's only on Kickstarter. Those won't be available anywhere else. So you get the 4-inch Caliber figure, you'll get the trade paperback, you'll get all the books, you'll get the custom D6 dice, all the D&D stuff, the T-shirt, the whole 9 yards, everything in there. And we'll have a few of those left, I believe. And so we have the Hero Collector cards, which were part of the first for issue 4. They were actually a stretch goal. They were pretty popular. People asked me to bring them back, so I'm putting them as an add-on for $5 in this campaign. And you can also add on and customize any tier that you want. So if you just want to add one of the books, or maybe you have a friend or something that might like an issue and you want to add one on, you can do that as well. And then down here, you can also get the stuffed Samedi plush for $35. This guy was in the last Kickstarter as well. And he was I had a lot of people ask for me to add him into this campaign, so I did that. And here's our team. So it's me. I do all the interior work. Cristiano Cruz I found through social media, and he's just been amazing as a colorist. I can't thank him enough for bringing my stuff to life. Brad, he plays Caliber, and he's been a dungeon master since he was like 5 years old. So he knows more about D&D than I do, and has really helped me balance the game. And he comes in and he takes all my ideas and he kind of like compresses them down and tells me what's going to be cool and what sucks. And then Terrell, him and I met because work kind of put us in the same apartment and said, you guys are going to live together. And we became best friends overnight. And so he plays Boulder, and in real life, he was actually an Olympic level wrestler in college. And so he also has a major in history and English. So he likes to take all my stuff and try and fix it as well. So those two guys balance me out pretty well. And then I have my players, Reach, Spectre, and Bones. And when we do when the book is finally complete and we letter everything, we do a table read, and they take the dialogue from the campaign. They just make sure that it sounds like what they would say. It usually turns into an argument because I have a recording of what they did say, and they're like, I never said that. So I hit play. I'm like, yes, you did. So that's our campaign. I do want to show off the trade paperback cover. Pretty stoked with how that came out.
Sure.
So you have them maskless on one side and then in their hero outfits on the other.
Very cool.
And that's our Kickstarter. We're sitting right now at 71 backers with I think we have $431 until the next stretch goal, which is pins and stickers.
You got 18 days left. You got plenty of time.
Yeah. This is a tough month. I didn't realize that March was such a tough month for Kickstarter. I had done some research last year when I was looking at what month I wanted to go into. And I guess everybody did the same research I did because they kept saying, March was a good month. January and February are really tough. March was good. So I was like, cool, I'll launch in March. And then everyone was like, well, I guess everybody launches in March.
I think this year overall is tough for whatever reason, result of COVID or just economics or everything combined. It seems like there's less and less really big campaigns happening right now, at least money wise. But the fact that Yeah.
Takes up some of
The
your
fact that you already passed your goal and you doubled it. You're doing really, really good. So.
Oh, I'm thrilled. We're blessed. And I looked at the project this time, and the cool thing that I look for is new readers and then return readers, and we have a good mix of both. There's less digital copies this time. A lot of people are getting physical copies, which is cool. And there's been a lot of add-ons as well, so people are getting, the multiple sets. And I had a few messages on here saying that, oh, my brother would love this. I'm going to get him a copy too. And that's cool. People see it and they want to check it out. And I've got a couple like overseas already that messaged me, and this is their third time backing the book. So that's really cool too. Like seeing people from other countries that continually come back and check out your series.
Yeah. No, definitely. Yeah, because overseas the problem was always horrible shipping costs.
But yeah, because you pay so much to ship the books, and the fact that they've done this now 3 times to get books, I think that's that says something. That makes me feel good. It means they must like it enough to pay the shipping on there.
Yeah. Oh, very cool. So do you see doing this like season after season, like just ongoing?
Well, we have like 36 of these things written, and
Oh my God.
if you watch the video in there towards I think the middle or closer to the end, we talk about how this came about. And one of my friends is like, well, knowing Chris, you'll probably get this no matter what. Even without Kickstarter, I probably would just continue, doing this. I've started to I didn't know I would enjoy making comic books as much as I do. When I first started this adventure, it was just a side hobby kind of thing. And now it's become a lot more to me. Jerry, he's in the comments down there. Him and I, we're part of another group called the Savage Sandbox, which is like a retail outlet. So now we have, worldwide distribution, and we've got a couple other projects in the works with like 7 other creators. And so this side hobby thing really turned into a lot more. So, I won't stop until I can't really draw anymore, to be honest with you. The little passion project has turned into quite a bit more. Plus, it's really cool for my friends. As much as it means to me, they've been able to experience things that you don't really normally get when you're just playing D&D. Like Boulder, the Terrell, he was at home one day and his wife came home from work and she said, this guy at work was talking about this comic book. And he really liked it. And he said one of the characters in the book reminded him of you. And she asked him what the name of the book was. And he said C.R.I.T. And we don't even know who he is. They live 2 hours away from me. So I don't know the guy. And he didn't know the guy. It's just somebody that had found our book. And I didn't know if it was a backer on Kickstarter, if he had found our website. But he read the books and he read all of them and said, the guy in the book reminded him of her husband. And she was like, that is my husband. And he had that moment of like, oh, yeah, that's me kind of thing. And he even in real life lost like 50 pounds. And, he got back in the gym so he could, look like Boulder. And he said that. He's like, if I'm going to be a superhero in a book, I got to look like him. And same with Brad. Brad in real life, he's been in 7 different forms of martial arts. He's a very competitive martial artist, and we're on 30s, 40s, and he was like, yeah, I kind of got out of shape, and then I saw myself in a comic book and was like, dang, I guess I need to be a superhero. So he's getting back in shape, and even with him, he's been playing D&D, like I said, since he was 5, and he was talking to some of his friends from when he was growing up, and they were playing D&D together one day. And he's like, our campaign's cool, but it's not this cool. And he pulls out a comic book. And they were like, man, that's what every DM and every player always says is like, we should turn our campaign into a comic. And nobody ever does. And he was like, yeah, but my guy did. And so those, and there's times when we'll get fan art of a character or something, and one of us will be having a bad day, and some random person will draw the character. And there's been a few moments where my friends have been like, hey, I had a real crap day, but then you sent me a picture that somebody drew of my character, and it's like, wow, that's, you can't really take that kind of stuff back. It really changes your perspective on stuff. And with that kind of stuff coming in, I don't see this going away anytime soon. I want to finish the story. I'll get through my 40 books, and we'll see where it goes from there. But I'm definitely committed to 40 books. And I'm only on 6, so we got some time.
Yeah. That's everything about this is amazing. That sounds so cool. It's like that you're doing this with your friends, and that it's like really beloved already, and you're making so many people happy with it.
Yeah, and my wife says this is my version of the movie Tag. Have you ever seen that movie?
I have not, but I loosely know what it's about.
So the movie Tag is about this group of friends that gets together every year for this massive game of tag. And, they've been through divorces, they've been through cancer, they always get together and play tag. It's their way of like escaping the real world for a bit. And that's like what our D&D sessions are. It's our escape from everything else. And really, we all became friends through playing Dungeons and Dragons. When I lived in Boone, North Carolina a few years ago, 12 years ago, I met these guys through work and became friends with them because one of them was like, hey, you should come play D&D with us. And I looked at him and I was like, I might work at GameStop, but I'm not that big of a nerd. And they kept asking me to come play with them. And finally I joined the campaign, and I don't know the age limit on your show, so I won't go into details. But the first campaign we played ended pretty terribly, and I played like a huge jerk. And they were like, well, I played the game so terribly that the DM actually, after my last move of the game, he closed the book and he left and never came back. That's how, I made him that mad. And so they were like, you didn't like it, did you? I was like, no, this was terrible. I just wanted to do the most stupid crap I could to make the guy mad so we didn't have to play anymore. And they were like, well, let's play a different game, like a different version. Let's play something that maybe you'll like. And Brad made a D&D version of Mass Effect in Dungeons and Dragons. And we played that game every Sunday night for 2 years. And we talked about that game for 10 years. When we got back in and started playing Crit, it's almost like, we're in our 20s again, sitting around eating pizza. And once a month, we're back in that world for a little bit. Like, it's that same feeling. And I think some of us, like I said, hadn't talked in 10 years when we started playing. And that first session, Terrell actually called me afterward when he was driving home, because he had like an hour and a half drive home. And he said, hey, I haven't hung out with these guys in 10 years. And that wasn't weird. And I was like, yeah, I know, we're friends. And he was like, yeah, but you would think after 10 years that, it'd be weird. I was like, nah, man, it was fun. And for that rest of that month, he just kept saying, like, this is weird, like it's almost like nothing ever changed, and he was like, I'm just so excited to come back and play again. Thank you. My daughter just brought me dinner. And so you just can't take that stuff away. Like it makes it bigger than just some, pictures on a page and some words and everything. It's a lot more than just the comic, which is probably why we'll continue doing this until we can't.
Right. That's awesome. Very, very cool.
What is it that you're working?
This is a Wildcat anthology story. So it's a friend of mine, Brian Smallwood, who created this character. It's this guy down below. I'll do a little of this action. He's released the comic with just the character, and he figured of doing an anthology, and he called on a bunch of his friends. So there's like 6 different teams doing stories, and I think Brian himself is doing a couple of different stories. This will all be part of the Wildcat Anthology. My story is 9 pages long. It's written by Lucifer Storm. It's penciled by Abel Parsons. I'm inking it, and then my co-host and also friend Alison is doing the gray tones and the lettering. So it's going to be a black and white book, but from a lot of things I've seen from the other creators, it's looking really good. And I'll show you. Let's see. I got pages here. So yeah, this is like the first page, and I got my settings a little dark, but essentially you can see it. So yeah, it's just I did these small because I don't know, save a little time. I got like 100 things I'm working on. But it's just really fun, really cool looking stuff. And it's pretty much straightforward, kind of simple story. But it's it's Wildcat, and there's this arena where werewolves fight and blah blah blah.
It's really cool. And, I love the art. The art's really good.
Yeah. Abel. He's got a wife and kids and day job and everything, but I really love his work. We started on a story that I want to get back to eventually. It was like a cyberpunk story that I'm going to rewrite and then get him to pencil. Just like a one-shot kind of thing. It's like I love working with other creators and see what develops, and it's like happy accidents.
Yeah, that's really cool. Like I said, the artwork is like really good.
Yeah,
I like the style.
Well, I was looking at your Kickstarter page and really liking the art I was seeing there. It's like, and you got all the cover works by different artists and whatnot. But yeah, just I think it's really.
Thank my wife. I give her all the credit for my artistic skill, because for like the first 3 books, I would show her every page as I was going, and she always adjusted something, moved something. It's tough when you feel really happy about something, and then my wife and I were best friends for 11 years before we even got engaged, and she would take a page and she would just erase things and then just redraw it. And her way of drawing is different than mine. I'm very like straight and forward, and she just sketched out. She would just put a rough sketch, like this is where the leg and the position should be, fix it. And after doing that for 3 books, you just kind of, your ego's out the window. You're just like, hey, what needs to be fixed? Give me a list. Okay, I'll fix it. And book 4, I remember I had come into the bedroom one night with my tablet, and I was showing her some of the pages for book 4, and she was looking through them, and she was like, I think you're at the point you really don't need my help anymore. And given, every once in a while she'll move something like an ankle or a fist or something, she'll move. And but other than that, it's been a journey for me artistically. And I get asked all the time, oh, your friends have characters in the book, what's your character? And I always tell everybody, my character is the art. You get to see the heroes level up book to book, and then you get to see my character, the artwork, level up book to book, because every time I get comfortable in a style, I start challenging myself. Well, what more can I do? What can I do to make this better? I've got a few friends that Robert Nix, who does some of my cover work, he's really good with action stuff. Even though his style is completely different than mine, I'll send him some of my rough sketches and say, like, what do you think of this? And he'll send me a whole page of red marks back. Oh, do it like this. And I'm like, okay, let me see if I can accomplish this.
Right.
So it's been...
Well, that's like what you're saying about your wife and stuff like that's to create the best kind of feedback. And especially somebody, like, where you'll take it in, you'll think about it and what they're saying and how they're putting it. Because it's like I'm not always open to criticism. Like at this point in my career, I've been doing this 30 years. It's like mostly I've been an inker. I'm going to be testing my metal as far as penciling and all that. But I know what looks good. I know what reads well. I know what is exciting to look at. It's like, and it's a lot of it is, like, because you could do hundreds of boring pages. A lot of it's, the way you lay it out, the make it interesting using angles but it's still gotta like I said, it's still gotta read well, which is mostly everything. I
like to approach it like a TV show, and I have really bad ADD, so I like to see camera movements and so when I'm picturing a page, and in D&D there's a lot of dialogue because there's always going to be some kind of role playing moment in Dungeons and Dragons. It's not just all fighting and action shots. So on those pages where we have a lot of the back and forth, I try to picture it, like a TV show that I watch, where I watch a lot of like cop shows and things, or detectives and murder mystery shows. And a lot of those are just two people in a room talking. And how do you make two people in one room look dynamic when they're sitting there? They're not even moving, right? So it's always a different angle, and it's, some kind of dramatic effect. So that's what I try to do is think out, like, in those terms, what would look cool on a screen. Because eventually I'd love to turn this into I've talked to a few studios, like small ones, about an animation for this. And so I wanted to be able to translate really easy, that way if someone ever says, hey, I want to turn this into a cartoon, okay, here's just a book, go and take this and turn it into something. That way it's really simple and very straightforward, and they know what angle to go by. And that's at first I thought of myself more as like a director with the stuff instead of like a writer, because my writing style is much different than anyone else that I met. Like Jerry in the comments, he writes his books. He scripts everything out and he edits it and goes back down and over it again. We just record it and then we make sure it looks good on page. That's it. It's not your traditional writing style. And we've even toyed with the idea of like changing things, but unless, because it is D&D, right? So you'll get the moment where I put 5 hours into building something and I put it in the game, and then they look at it for a second and say, this sucks, we're not using this. Well, I'll cut that out of the comic because I don't want a new reader especially to come in and go, oh, that was cool. And then they never see it again and it's like unfulfilled, right? And so I edit some of that stuff out, the pointless things that I've done that never come back. And that's about the only editing you'll see. I've taken a few of the missions where they've been very repetitive or they do the same thing, and I'll mishmash them together. Mainly because some of the stuff that happened in one mission, and this was book 4. Book 4 was really 2 different sessions mixed together, because half of one session, just none of the content we kind of retconned it later on, like months later. So I'm glad we have 36 books written so I can, fix the retcons. But I had to edit that. But everything really happened. I just had to kind of like seam it together properly so that to a reader, you can't really tell that we had started one idea that didn't really pay off. So we just went into a different direction. But that's Dungeons and Dragons. If you play enough, you're like, oh, that kind of sucked. Let's do something different. So keep the players involved, because that's the last thing you want to do is, especially as a dungeon master, you don't want to put your players in a position where they're not having fun. And that's really all my book is about, is just having fun at the end of it. That's probably the best review we've ever gotten. Is I get it more often than not. Hey, your book was really fun. I'm like, that's awesome. Like, that's all I want. I had a guy ask me, he was like, isn't that like a bad review? I'm like, what do you mean? How is that a bad review? Well, don't you want them to like comment on something? No. If they had fun reading it, then awesome. That's all I care about. It's fun. It's supposed to be. We're not trying to be Batman. We're not trying to be the next, Marvel Avengers. We're not trying to do that. We're just trying to be Crit. And if Crit's fun, then that's what we're supposed to be. A bunch of dudes playing D&D, having fun.
Yeah. I didn't recognize, obviously I never really played D&D, so I didn't recognize crit meant something. I thought like maybe grit was spelled wrong or something.
Nope. It actually stands for Covert Reconnaissance Infiltration Team. And I was a big fan of like Wildcats as a kid.
Right.
Back in the 90s, they always had those the acronyms. And when we were tossing around the idea for the comic, it was originally Regulators was what I wanted to call it, just because I wanted them to scream, Regulators mount up from, the rap song in the 90s. And they wouldn't do that. They thought that was stupid. And I was like, that's the only thing I'm asking you guys to do. Can you just do one thing for me? Nah, that's stupid. We're not doing it. So I had to change the name from Regulators to, and I was like, well, how about we call the team Crit? And they're like, oh, that's cool. And they're like, what does it mean? I'm like, I don't know. They're like, we'll figure it out. So I came up with Covert Reconnaissance Infiltration Team. They're not very covert. They really don't do much reconnaissance. I guess they infiltrate terribly, but they get it done. But they are a team.
That's awesome.
Yeah, people ask me all the time, oh, are they very covert? No, they use a lot of grenades, or they just drive a car through a wall. Do they infiltrate? Well, they do. They just do it in ways you wouldn't expect them to, like pretend to be drunk or high to distract someone, then somebody else shoots them or punches them in the face, and they always do something weird. And I've been friends with these guys for 10 years. We've been playing D&D for like 10 years. So you'd think that I can anticipate some of the stuff that they're going to do. But just when I get used to how they're going to play, they purposely change everything to screw with me. So that's exciting.
Yeah, it'll never be dull comic.
No, it's never a dull moment. Which is probably one of the reasons we've been playing for going on 4 years. So that's impressive in itself. If you talk to anybody that plays Dungeons and Dragons, having a campaign go that long, and I'm kind of blessed to have the guys that just want to come back month after month and spend 6 hours beating up the air.
Right. Like I'm in a small town in Kentucky, and there was a comic store here briefly. It didn't survive, and this was before COVID. But their sort of most successful branch was like all the card games they had. Like they would have events, and they would have card games going on, and it was pretty exciting. Like for all the kids in the neighborhood go there and play it and whatnot. And it's for me as an outsider, it's fun to watch. People get excited about something. But unfortunately, they disappeared. I think they might be doing some of it online now or whatnot. But
What part of Kentucky did you say?
Louisville. I'm like an hour south of that.
Yeah, I actually I lived in Bardstown for a little bit. My dad's from there, and my uncle lives in Shepherdsville.
I lived in Bardstown for like 2 years, Louisville for probably a year. Now I'm in Campbellsville.
Okay.
You know, I'm originally from New York, though. Like, this is all foreign to me.
See, I'm originally from Connecticut.
There you go.
Yeah, my dad is from Kentucky. My mom was from Connecticut, and then she moved to Maine. And I'm from North Carolina now, so all over the place.
Nice.
Pops, what's up?
Hey, Pops. Well, I'm gonna, you know, I'm set to go to Heroes Con in June. I don't know if you're doing conventions right now or will be.
Trying. I've got like 5 applications in. I'm doing a show in Baltimore in October. I've got 2 in North Carolina. Charlotte has one in April, and they have again one in May. I'm doing both of those. And then there's another con in Winston-Salem. I want to say June that we're doing. So I'm trying. It's just a lot of the ones I applied for this year, just either they were already full because they had canceled the year prior, so they wanted to give first dibs to people that had come around.
Yeah.
It's been tough to get into cons. So it's, putting applications in, crossing your fingers and hoping, and then, making sure you have enough time to put in for time off from work. So,
yeah. Yeah, it's like we're re-emerging into con territory, and the world is still going crazy. So,
well, we need something to get away from all that, to kind of escape. Which
for sure, yeah.
Nothing better than to dive into fictional worlds and enjoy the company of other people that enjoy the same stuff.
Absolutely.
I went to New York Comic-Con back in 2013, and I did. I never do, cosplay or anything. But my cousin, he said, "I want to get really drunk, and I want to go to Comic-Con drunk in cosplay." I hadn't seen him in a few years, and so I was like, "All right, screw it, let's go." So we went out. We started drinking in the morning. We all got dressed up in different outfits. They went as some game. I forgot what game they were playing at the time, but they dressed up as characters from a video game. And I went as Solid Snake. And we actually apparently did well because there's pictures, like people were taking pictures with us, but I don't really remember half of the stuff we did. That was quite a weekend. It was the last time because his girlfriend was pregnant at the time, and he said, "I don't know when I'm gonna be able to do this again, so I want to do something ridiculous and crazy. Let's go get dressed up and be idiots." And I was like, "All right, let's go."
I don't remember what it was. I remember going to a comic convention and being at an after party, and I was dressed up as like Christian Bale from American Psycho.
Oh, such a good movie. It's one of my favorites.
And yeah, it's like fun times.
That movie was probably what made me like Christian Bale. And I've always been a huge fan of him because of that movie. There was a time when I was trying really hard to get into acting, and that monologue he does where he's confessing everything on the phone, I learned that whole monologue, and I used that for an audition once, and the director, the casting director, emailed me and said the only problem with my audition was that they couldn't tell the difference between me and Christian Bale because I even had like the enunciations and everything. I would practice that thing in the shower. I watched that movie. It was on repeat. I think I burned the DVD out 2 or 3 times and had to replace it. I love that movie.
Nice.
I do believe when my wife and we were friends, I told her to come over so we could watch that movie because she had never seen it, and I made her watch it. and I probably made her watch it 2 or 3 more times on top of that. So good.
Yeah, pretty crazy. Well, what else do I want to ask you? Well, like, kind of two things. Like, who are your like writing and artistic influences? Like, what maybe got you into wanting to do anything of this sort in the first place? You know.
So as a kid, I got in. I've been into comics since I was little, but I never really got heavy into collecting comics and following a series until Chris Claremont with X-Men. That was a big one. I remember I still have my first print of X-Men #1 by him and Jim Lee, and I have most of that original run in comic saved. I got into Wolverine. I got heavy into Wolverine. I didn't care about the writing as much as I did just the character, even like the Patch series and all that. Like, I just loved him as a character. He was the gruff, short guy, and I'm not that tall, so having a short guy with an attitude that walks around, smokes cigars, and beats people up, I thought was just awesome as a kid. And so X-Men and Wolverine were kind of like my 2 favorites for a while. And then Image came out, and I remember my father and I traveled for a couple different summers. He's a truck driver, or he was, and we went to Comic-Cons all over the United States, and I was able to meet these guys as they were, just starting Image. So I met, Liefeld, I met Todd McFarlane, I met Jim Lee in the early 90s, and I still have like the first run of Spawn. I collected issue 1 through like it's like 32, I think I have all the first prints of. And every summer we would go and I would collect these things, and I would just go across the country buying comic books and going to conventions and meeting these creators. And I dabbled in drawing, but I was very young, and I wasn't as hard-headed as I am now, and so I wasn't very good, and I just kind of gave up on the idea of ever doing comics. It never really crossed my mind after that. And then I got into music. I toured, and like I said, I was signed for a few years, and I tried to get back into X-Men after years of not reading books, and I just couldn't do it. Wolverine had lost his adamantium, and then I was just confused. I was like, where are the X-Men that I liked? Like, the last story I really enjoyed was Age of Apocalypse. Loved that entire storyline. And then just after that ended, I just couldn't figure out where to go. So I lost interest in comics for a little while. And then someone said, oh, Spawn's never changed. And I'm like, oh, cool. Then I'll go check out Spawn again. And, because I like that idea that you could just pick up where you left off, and you don't have to worry about which issue #1 do you have to read. That really got me back into comics. And then when I first started drawing, I watched all these videos with Todd McFarlane, because I remembered he had struggled to get into the industry. And, I knew I didn't have the coolest artwork in the world. And honestly, I think our story's cool, but I think every creator thinks that their story's cool. So I didn't want to be oblivious to the fact that maybe we weren't as cool as we thought. And so I wanted to dive into the mind of someone who had faced, so much rejection, and see how he handled it. And in every single one of his interviews, he would talk about how, he was working at Marvel one day, and he got a rejection letter from Marvel, and he walked, down to the floor, and he handed the guy the rejection letter and said, hey, you just mailed this to me, but I work upstairs. And they're like, oh, okay. He's like, yeah, I'm working on this book, and you just rejected me. Like, what the hell? So you gotta, and he saved like all of those. And then he's one of the most renowned people in comics now. And maybe not for his artwork or his writing ability, but his tenacity and his business ethics are, they're undeniable. So I really look up to the idea that those guys then kind of paved that way for you can be more than just Marvel or DC, and you can still do it. And I know there's a lot of companies like Boom and things that exist now that are out there, but it's a very intimidating industry because it's not, and I come from music, and music is very similar in the fact that it's very it's an intimate thing, because when you write music, you put a lot of emotion into what you're writing. Even though I played a lot of metal music, and you don't think there's a lot of emotion put into that, but I will tell you that I still listen to some of the stuff I wrote, and I'm like, oh man, I remember what I was going through when I wrote that song.
Right.
And when you're drawing and putting out, this stuff for the world to see, you're kind of exposing yourself to people, not in a way that's going to get you in trouble or anything, but you're putting yourself out there, and it's just very intimidating for a first time, artist and writer kind of thing. So getting that feedback to say, hey, this guy did it, and he was told he sucked for years, but he still made millions, right? And people love his work, and Spawn is an undeniably cool character. So, it's got to say something. The guy did something right. So heavily influenced by like Todd McFarlane's journey.
Yeah. I totally get that. Like, I know, like, even though I've drawn all my life, I knew when I officially decided I wanted to do comics for a living, that I sucked. That, like, I had some ability, but pretty much I sucked, and I worked the first couple of years that I was, trying to get in, gigs on independent comics and everything. I worked on getting better, and it paid off. Eventually I worked from home in DC, and I've sort of been, my last work from home in DC was like in 2000, and I did something for Valiant shortly after, but I've been working on a lot of independent titles for independent publishers or self-publishers. And the reason for all this is that, I knew when I first started reading comics that there were indie comics, and I've been taking this sort of like bus ride where I'm making a really wide turn. Like you said, your dad was a truck driver, like just going miles out of the way just to make a turn. But yeah, it's like I love seeing all these independent creators, and especially like with crowdfunding, that it's accessible because everybody has a computer, everybody has an internet, and it's like, hey, you want to pick up somebody's new creation, you want to give somebody, support some indie creators out there, and it's like, you just look around, there's so many out there. And the other question I had in mind to ask you is, like, what have been some of your biggest challenges as far as crowdfunding, and what would you say to somebody who's considering it?
My biggest challenge has just been getting the word out there, because there's so many crowdfunding books at any given time. And in 2020, I will say I've been on Kickstarter since 2020, and in that time period, it's just been progressively getting more saturated, which makes it harder. It's not discouraging because the goal is to bring back people every time, and if you're making good books and you're fulfilling and you're doing what you're supposed to do, then you should be able to bring people back. But it's still a challenge, book to book. You want to see growth, not just monetarily. For me, it's how many backers you get, and I think the farther we go into the saturation of the market, the harder it is to get the new backers. It's you're getting your old fan base is going to come back, but trying to differentiate yourself, or maybe like fight the algorithm of Kickstarter, you're not getting seen as much because there's a lot more on there now, which makes it hard. Those are like some of the challenges I've had just with crowdfunding, because it's also a full-time job. You've got to, you got to post on social media 3 times a day. You kind of got to annoy everybody you know for 30 days. And, I think that kind of, if someone's annoyed with you pursuing a dream, then they might not be the best person to have on your social media anyway. So there's that.
Yeah.
But there's just that challenge. Like, am I going to fund? Am I going to have more backers than I did last time? And I don't care about the money. I care about getting the book in people's hands more than I do the money. Because once I hit the funding goal, the book's paid for. So the money doesn't matter anymore. It's just about getting those new readers and getting more people interested in Crit is the end goal. That's why I continue to put the books out, is to get it into more people's hands. But it just seems that the further we go, the more you're fighting some algorithm, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, or Kickstarter. You're always fighting an uphill battle there. And they continually change the rules of the game once you get used to them. So those are my challenges. My advice to a new creator that's going to go to Kickstarter, at least give yourself 30 days prior to build up hype around your launch date. Because if you start cold and you don't have anybody interested, you're going to spend 30 days chasing that funding goal. But if you can get a good chunk of your goal cut out in your first day, it's going to make the rest of your 30 days that much easier. Yeah, right. I've seen quite a few guys that do, like me and my friends, we do live launches. So we get people pumped up the night of, and while we're doing like a live Instagram launch, we have our friends jump in and out. That way, their followers on their platform, we do it on Instagram, but you can do it on Facebook too, where it notifies people, oh, this person's going live, and they would go in and just check it out. And now all of a sudden, you're getting more eyes on your project while it's going live. And like I said, I funded in 26 minutes. I've seen another friend of mine funded in like 17 minutes just from doing these events where people feel really engaged. And so I would definitely take a month, advertise before your Kickstarter comes up, get people hyped, show off some of the artwork, show off some stuff, and really build that hype around your project before it launches. Don't wait until it launches to hype it up, because then you're backtracking, and it's that 30 days isn't going to be fun. I will say funding in such a short amount of time is a stress relief, because now it's just like, okay, what kind of cool stuff can I do for stretch goals? How can I get more eyes on my project? I'm not really worried about, are my artists going to get paid? That's already taken care of.
Right. I'm curious, have you considered putting your campaign on Indiegogo?
I did one on Indiegogo, and it did all right. It didn't do as well as Kickstarter, and because I continually promote the Kickstarters, if I was going to do an Indiegogo, I would probably just want to put it on there and see what it did. I don't like to request so much money, if that makes any sense. So if I did an Indiegogo, I would want to do something that I hadn't put on Kickstarter. So when I did an Indiegogo, I had just funded book 2, and book 2 like double funded. More than that. I think I made 4 times my goal with book 2. And so I told every backer with book 2, hey, when I do book 3, just pay the shipping and I'll send you book 3, because you've already paid for it. I've already got enough money to pay the colorist for book 3. And I'm that guy. I'll give away stuff for free as a thank you, just because, and then my wife will yell at me. But I wanted to do that. Yeah. And book 3 wound up having 2 connecting covers. So I was like, well, that's marketing 101. You give something away for free, and then they want to buy the other one if they want, as a collector. And so I went, and I was like, well, we'll do Indiegogo, because during the time period that I was working on book 3, a friend of mine reached out and he said, I want to redo that original book that you never released, because I let him read it. And I had given him my old tablet because he was drawing on his phone, and he's a phenomenal artist. And I said, well, hey, I don't want you just drawing on your phone. So I shipped him to Australia, I shipped him a tablet, and
Right.
he got it and was like, well, as a thank you, I want to redraw your book. So he did like an 18-page redo of issue 0 for me. And even though I had given him something, of value, I still wanted to, I feel like artists need to be paid for their work. My wife is a photographer, like career photographer, and I've been the starving musician before. So I want to make sure people, if they put any effort into my work, they get paid. So I said, well, I already said I would not go to Kickstarter with book 3, but I didn't say I wouldn't go to Indiegogo with a package. So I did 0, 1, 2, and 3 on Indiegogo, and actually did better up there than I did on Kickstarter for just book 2. So I was able to, convert some people.
Right.
But like I said, if I was to go back, I would want to do something different than what I do on the Kickstarter. So that way I'm not just kind of double dipping, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's definitely people out there that's their intention, to double dip. But I think it's, from my point of view, because I have a book called Retro that I'll get out this year. And I did a couple years back, I did some initial funding on Kickstarter with a short campaign. It was only 5 days. And I like that kind of format. It's like I busted my ass for a week, but I was done after that, But I always thought I'll do a short Kickstarter and then I'll do a longer Indiegogo, and it sort of will balance itself out, and I'll be able to reach different people, because some people only go to Kickstarter, some people only go to Indiegogo. Hey, Dirk, welcome. And welcome Princeton and everybody else who showed up. There's lots of people in the chat. But yeah, it's different people have different strategies, and if you tried it out and you know how it works and how it can benefit you and how to approach it yourself, and
I want to do something, but I think it'll be a little while till I can do something unique.
Right. Right.
I just would need to figure out how to do something unique on there, to where it's not just a repetition of my Kickstarter. That's my only thing.
Well, you could finance the first animated, episode.
That I can put on Indiegogo, because it's completely different, and we can do books as rewards. When I go and do the actual, so the end game for C.R.I.T is we go through the 40 books. I've got 3 side books. One is a book called Mr. Wizard and Friends, which is another campaign that we did, but that campaign exists as like pop culture in C.R.I.T's world. So Mr. Wizard and Friends is like, the Avengers for them. Everybody, watches it on TV, has T-shirts, memorabilia, things like that. So as a stretch goal, I want to introduce that book, 4 pages of it. And what I want to do is add, I don't want to put out a second series that would take away from C.R.I.T, but more put 4 pages at the end of every book moving forward. So you kind of get a taste of it in every issue. And it exists in the world, so C.R.I.T might reference something that you read in that, those 4 pages. So there's that series, and then we have a side series later on called Vanguard, which C.R.I.T kind of comes to a halt, like a pause moment in their universe where the heroes are all disjointed. It's going crazy for them. And because we've been playing this campaign for so long, actually, we're about to start this Vanguard campaign, which is another group that exists in the same universe, kind of, but they're all human. They're not superpowered. They just have high-tech weaponry and things. And I won't give away much about that, but it's a human version within the same universe, but it allows me to expand the world of C.R.I.T and show other things that are going on, not just what C.R.I.T's handling.
Right.
And we do about 6 issues of that, and then we go back into Crit. So it kind of like diverts for a little bit, but where one leaves off, the other one kind of picks up, and they all connect. And then there's a side book for a villain that I'm doing, because the villain, he dips out at one point and then shows back up. And in game, it's very explanatory. Villain just shows back up. We don't need to know what he's been doing.
Right.
Out of game, I really wanted this character to have their own story arc. So when I had first had this idea for him to leave and come back, I had pitched to the guys that we actually write a story for him. And everybody liked it. We've already got the story written. But I don't want to, I won't do that book. I'm going to actually get someone else to do it, and we'll either crowdfund it or siphon off something else. That one I might put on Indiegogo because it's a side book. Same with the other series, Vanguard. Those I don't mind kind of doing offshoots, because I won't be doing those books. I'm going to hand that off to somebody else. And that way I can have 2 series kind of going on at the same time. And it's not taking away from the story. That's one of my biggest fears. I see a lot of creators that have 6 different books in 6 different teams doing 6 different things, even though they may exist in the same universe.
Right.
And you're getting bits and pieces of everybody's story. It's still distracting, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I mean that's the failure of X-Men, isn't it?
Right. But at least with X-Men, you have a monthly, okay, or monthly, sometimes a weekly with those guys, and so you're always getting more of that story in a short amount of time. And you have to think too, where we're at in the world, we have such a short attention span now, much shorter than we did a decade ago or even 20 years ago, because everything is on demand right now. Okay, like I won't even watch a TV show if there's not 5 episodes, because I can't handle waiting for the next episode. Right?
True.
So, and that's because we have streaming and all these things on demand. If you have, and as indie creators, we are limited to the time frame in which we can release books. So, unless you're pulling in money or you're independently wealthy and can pay artists, or you have friends that just donate work to you, like it's really hard to put out a book. I tested my talent, and I can put out a book every 3 months if I work my butt off. I see guys that put out, let's see, I've been doing Kickstarters, like I said, I've been doing this for 2 years. And in that 2-year time period, I do know a couple guys that have put out only 2 books, they put out 6 books, but they've only hit issue 2 on maybe 1 series. And I've seen them try to put that issue 2 out later on. So they did like issue 1 of this book, then issue 1 of this book, and then issue 1 of this book.
Yeah.
And they go back to put that issue 2 out, and their performance drops heavily on that issue 2 because their fan base is now divided, right?
Right.
They're like, well, which book are you doing? Where's all your effort going into? And I don't want to run that risk. I want to be able to keep Crit and everything with our side books together. So when we go into the Vanguard series, it will be labeled Crit. It'll still fall in line with our issues. You just won't see the team there. And you'll be able to see the team because it's the same players. And I've repeatedly asked them and told them they're not them. So create a character now. You've been role playing for 3 years. You can handle, stepping in the shoes of a new character and role playing a character. It's going to be a challenge for them. Whereas for me, I've been role playing 50 different NPCs for years and talking to myself repetitively. That's the worst part about playing D&D and having so many NPCs. You talk to yourself for like 30 minutes. So that's just where we want to go with the series. But after the 40th book, when we come back into Crit and we end the series, and we kind of all agreed to where we want to end, the goal then is now we have the world established, where they're at, what's going on, and I want to release Crit the game, and I really want to release our version. D&D has so many different, if you go onto Kickstarter, so many different campaigns. So you'll play the Crit campaign, but it's a setting. That's all it is. This is the world we're in. C.R.I.T exists, right? So they're NPCs in that world now. Some of them, because a few of them have died now. Well, just saying, it's D&D. We're gonna kill a couple. It just happens. All right. So the remaining characters exist within the world. You might interact with, say, Boulder or somebody that's from the universe, but now people are going to be able to build their own story within our world. And I want to build our website for people to be able to submit their stories and their campaigns to us. And maybe those, like, the cool thing about me when I was a kid, I was into Star Wars and that expanded universe. A lot of those were just ideas that people pitched to George Lucas. And he was like, oh, that's really cool. I'll make that canon, right? So I want to give people the opportunity to create like canon things within our universe. And maybe we turn it into something, or maybe their characters, maybe we, hopefully at that point I'll have a little bit of money. Maybe I'll be retired and I can siphon off my funds and be like, hey, I'm going to turn your story into a book now. I want to be able to do something like that. I think that would be unique. Yeah. I don't like just doing the same thing over, but the end game has always been to release our version of superheroes within D&D. And I think if we do that after the story's done, we're able to create the setting and have an established world for people to play in. And then we have the comic book that builds up into that. So it's like, I play Star Wars D&D because I enjoy the universe that much to where if we play, like, you throw me into a setting, I'm like, oh, that happened on that planet, and I can do this, and I remember this, and I'm so much more invested because I know the setting. If I play some standard D&D setting, I'm not as invested because I know nothing about this world except for maybe some of the things I read online from somebody's campaign. But if somebody reads our entire series, that's like, the Marvel role-playing games. People get into them because they know the characters. And so I think it's kind of cool that we could release something like that and be able to pull, some fans in and do something different than just have a comic book or just have a D&D. We have like this ecosystem.
Right. Yeah, that would be great. So we've gone over an hour. Is there anything we missed? I will mention that I put the link to the campaign down below the video description box. People can go check it out. And it's live, 18 days?
18 days left.
18 days left.
Yep. We're $431 away from the next stretch goal, which is stickers and pins. We've got collector cards unlocked. We've got mini posters unlocked. So all the physical backers will get those. I'll do a digital release for all the digital backers as well. So you get to see the artwork on those. And then if we hit 4,000 on this campaign, I am releasing the first 4 pages of Mr. Wizard and Friends, which is very over the top. It makes C.R.I.T look like a kid's game. It ends in a WWE wrestling match in Australia, which is really the gate to hell. And Randy Savage comes out from hell and saves everyone. That's how the story ends. I'll just leave it at that. Nice. That's how funny that one gets. So we're going to release that as kind of like a 4-page thing, and I want to do that as a stretch goal in this campaign. So if you're a first-time reader interested in checking it out, you can pick up all the books on there. If you want to check it out before backing it, you can always download the digitals. They're $1 on my website, homebrewedcomics.com. And if you think it's cool, you can go to Kickstarter and get yourself the newest issue. We've got all of them on there as well. So I appreciate everybody's time, and thanks for shooting the C.R.I.T with me.
My pleasure, man. It was great having you on. And you want people to follow you on socials at all, or? Yeah,
Instagram's probably the best one. No, I'm pretty social on Instagram. It's really hard to balance all of them. I have Twitter and I have Facebook, which I have the links on my Instagram. That's why I tell everyone to go to Instagram. So it's on Instagram. I'm just at Homebrewed Comics, just like on the video. And I have a link in there that links to everything, including my website and the Kickstarter. So if you want to go check out the stuff there. I usually post on Instagram first because it will, send it to everything else as well.
There you go. Excellent. Oh, thank you everybody who showed up today in the chat, and everybody watching this now or later. Give the video a like, just subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Chris, this has been a great conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me out.
My pleasure, man. My pleasure. And yeah, I'll be here tomorrow again, probably at 4, about I don't know what, but we'll see. Take care, everybody. Have a great evening and keep making comics and art.